Thursday on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. It's tourney day, we'll call it. Tourney Thursday here on the show. We're going to get into Syracuse's tournament path. I know you might be thinking, it's December. We haven't even flipped the calendar yet, but we're going to dive into it because people are wondering. People are thinking, is it NIT? Is it NCAA tournament this year? What to expect? We'll lay out the entire roadmap for Syracuse and also some Benny Williams thoughts because these next two games could be very pivotal for his developments. We will dive into all of that coming up next.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in. Happy Thursday to you on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. I'm Tyler Aki. I'm joined by Tim Leonard. We're together every single weekday on the show. Only place to get daily SU pods. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. That includes YouTube because we are free and available on all platforms. So be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast, especially on YouTube as well. Throwing some bonus content out for you guys. There's some live shows as well that we like to do, interact with all you guys. Today's episode brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. All right, Tim, I know we're having the tournament conversation today. We'll also get to some Benny Williams thoughts, but some people may be listening to this right now and thinking, like, is this premature? This feels premature. Like, what's going on? Like, the ACC play really hasn't even started yet. But what say you? Does this feel a little premature? Is this just kind of the conversation you have to have when you're a 500 team right now?
Well, I think it's on people's minds for sure. And it might be premature, yes, but also it's Lehigh this week. There's been a little bit of a lull. Unfortunately, football is not giving us a ton on National Signing Day front in terms of
Did get a transfer defensive back.
They got a little bit. They got punter out of Australia,
you got like 30 more bodies to fill, I think. Something in that neighborhood.
And Dino said that in his press conference. He was like, yeah, we're about 50% through the class. Well, that's not ideal, Dino.
It is December. We're recording this right now, December 15th afternoon. And yeah, today's signing day. So you might want to tighten up those bootstraps because you got some work to do.
Yeah. So anyway, it feels like an appropriate time to kind of be having a big picture type of week, right? And that's what we've been doing. State of the program off of the loss to Georgetown. We've talked a lot about this week. And now I think that's just what I've been texting a lot of my buddies this week is the topic of, all right, can they do it again? Can they reel us back in? Can they get back into the NCAA tournament picture? And is there still hope for this team to figure it out? And there definitely is still some hope, but the more I've looked into it, the more I felt like this is a particularly rough start, even compared to some of the other teams that we've had at Syracuse recently.
All right, so let's start with this, all right? How likely is it at this point right now? You're sitting 5-5, 3 critical losses, 2 wins that are, I think when it's all said and done, will look solid for you. But at this point, how likely, if you were to pin a percentage, what's your percentage of Syracuse getting into the tournament right now?
So I went to barttorvik.com. Shout out to them. They have Syracuse as the 74th ranked team right now, but they do the T-Ranketology where he runs simulations and gives a percentage chance of not necessarily if the tournament started tomorrow, but what he projects based on his simulations and his computer numbers of the percentage of chance of Syracuse getting that NCAA tournament bid is pretty low. It's 2.9% right now on T-Ranketology. And when you look at how they break it down, they have the typical last 4 in, first 4 out, and then they start ranking teams based on kind of your percentage chance and what your resume will be at the end of the year. Again, it's a projection kind of simulating the rest of the season for all these teams. And Syracuse is the 29th team out, basically, of the sort of bracketology rundown right now. So they've got a long way to go. I say that to say that also that doesn't account for the fact that we know Syracuse is going to get better. We know there's history that the computer numbers really can't sort of do a justice of teams rounding into form at Syracuse under Jim Boeheim in that February, March time period of them picking off a couple big wins here or there, reeling us back in. I would say my personal calculation is like 10, 15% chance right now.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher than that. I'll probably go 25-30% right now. And you bring up the reeling people back in. And I'm just looking at the schedule right now. I see the stretch. Like I see the stretch where this team reels the fan base and the bracketologists back in. It's that late February stretch, actually more like mid-February, where you go Virginia Tech, Boston College, Notre Dame, Duke, North Carolina. Like that's the stretch where it happens. We see it every damn year where it's like that little stretch in February, a couple of good teams that you go out and beat, and you see it on the calendar once again this year. So I don't know. Like I'm a little more optimistic, I think, than you are right now. Again, and 25-30% isn't really optimism per se. It's
Right.
a very low percentage. I'm not at the 2.9 or whatever Bart Torvik threw out there. It's not at that level right now for me.
Yeah, but I think it's worth noting. I mean, that's just purely computer numbers, no
Yeah.
objectivity to it.
Hmm.
And as I said, it doesn't count for the fact that Syracuse usually gets better, and they have a way of sort of proving us wrong at this time period. If you would have asked me last year, I mean, at one point we know our guy Lee put his shoe on the line, and we made the mistake of eating
Put it
some
on the line
oranges
and
at
put
the
it
end
in
of the
his
year.
stomach. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, so it happens every year, right? And I feel like I've gotten pretty used to this formula and it's easier to project over time. And I'm not going to totally roll it out because of that. But I also will say that you got to get to at least 19 or 20 wins. And where it stands right now, yes, it's a tougher non-con than they've usually played 5-5. At this point is usually against an easier schedule. And it's a little misleading to just say, okay, they're 5-5, and they probably will get to 7-5 to end the non-con. Hopefully, we'll see if that Cornell game gets in. But that's still to get to 19 wins. That's 12 more ACC wins on top of the one you've got already. To get to 20 wins, assuming you beat Lehigh and Cornell, that's 13 of your last 19 regular season games. You're winning in conference play. And even that is probably just putting you on the bubble at that point because usually Syracuse is around the 19 to 20 mark when they're on the bubble, but this year it feels like you might need to do more because the ACC isn't as good.
Well, plus you've got the ACC tournament to work with as well, so
Exactly.
you can pick. It depends, of course, on seeding and all that stuff. But yeah, no, there's going to be wins to be had in the ACC because of what the ACC is this year. That's for certain. But yeah, you've certainly dug yourself a hole so far, and with Lehigh and Cornell, these should be nice little tune-up games for you. I do want to get into the path a little bit of how Syracuse can get there because I want to bring up some bracketology stuff too that Joe Lunardi has put out because I think it actually might increase some people's optimism. And it's something that I kind of hit on earlier on in the week. So we'll do that in just a second. But first, this is it. The putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. If you want to see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. They are the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. With visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more, NetSuite is everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of your competition. 93% of surveyed businesses increased their visibility and control after upgrading to NetSuite. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and right now, through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. So head on over to netsuite.com/lockedonncaa for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. So what's the path here? And again, you've kind of laid it out. You probably have to be in the neighborhood of 20 wins if you want to get into the NCAA tournament. Let me pull up some stuff here from Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology. Now, this was updated. What's today? We're doing this on the 15th. So this was updated on the 10th. Okay. So pretty much anything that's happened this week out of the cards of what the data is taking in here. Here's who he has as his last four in. You ready for it? Florida State, Wake Forest, Memphis, and Northwestern. And when you go through that crop of teams right there, I think that inspires some optimism. Florida State is 5-4. You have a head-to-head win over them, and Florida State also has 0 good wins to date so far. Wake Forest is 10-1 with 2 top 40 KenPom wins. Tough to argue them. In fact, they probably shouldn't even be in the last 4 in based on what they've done so far. 10-1.
Right. That's probably projecting that they're going to falter maybe a little. I don't
Right.
know how he does it, but yeah.
And then Memphis. Now, you got to remember, this was written before their win against Alabama. Okay. Memphis at the time, 5-4 with 4 straight losses, 3 of which you would declare as bad losses. And then Northwestern 7-2, and 5 of those wins are coming against KenPom 265 or worse. So there's your last 4 in right there. And if that's kind of the competition, it's kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier in the week is I don't think the last 8 to 10 teams in, it's going to be a total crapshoot. And if you're Syracuse, you can certainly find your way in. And if it comes down to that 68th and final spot and it's you versus San Francisco, guess who's getting in based off of the brand? It's Syracuse.
Yeah. So what I don't know there is Joe Lunardi projecting, or is that him saying if the tournament started on December 11th or right now, that would be the field? Because to me, when you read Memphis before the Alabama win, I don't even know if they were an NIT team. I mean, I guess they beat Virginia Tech, but they had some really bad losses in there and not a whole lot going for them that you'd have to think he's giving them sort of the benefit of the doubt of turning it around and also factoring in, okay, they were preseason top 10, and that's not just strictly resume. So I don't know if it's fair to just stack up, okay, this is what Memphis has done so far compared to what Syracuse has done and say that the bubble is going to be weak just based on that.
Can I give you some of the first 4 buys as well? We've got Oklahoma, San Francisco, Louisville, West Virginia. Like, there's not a lot of inspiring teams there either. I mean, Oklahoma might be all right, but and San Francisco is doing well in the U.S.
crop of teams.
But
West
like
Virginia, San Francisco's undefeated still, I think.
Louisville and West Virginia, I mean, that's a bunch of nothing right there for me. And that's what you're going to be going up with against towards the end of the season. Like, I think you have a real path when you're looking at the competition that you're going up against. I just think the top of the top is pretty good this year in the sport, but once you get to the middling and back end teams, it is a very weak group that can be exploited pretty easily.
Well, West Virginia, I mean, they're 9-1. I'm looking at them now. UConn, they have a win over, which is a good UConn team that's ranked. They lost to Marquette. That's their loss. They also beat Clemson at a neutral site. Haven't really played a ton outside of that. I mean, I just don't know how we can tell right now that the bubble is shaping up to be weak. It's almost like our Syracuse conversation is premature, and projecting what the bubble is going to be, I feel like, is premature right now as well. I think we know for sure the ACC is going to be weaker than normal, but we also kind of know that the Big East is going to be better than normal, I would say, based on Xavier being ranked, UConn I just mentioned. Even teams like, I mean, Villanova's always there. Seton Hall is now ranked. It seems like the Big East is a little bit deeper than normal.
Big East seems like a conference, though, where the bottom's going to fall out at a certain point.
The Big East?
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like, does that really matter for the bubble? Because I think what I'm talking about is how many teams are they going to send?
Okay, so like, you know what the top of the top looks like in the Big East, like Villanova, UConn, those will be teams that'll be there. But like the Xavier, Seton Halls, Providences, Creighton, St. John's, Marquettes, Butlers, DePauls, like they may be out to good starts now, but those teams are all susceptible to beat each other on any given night. And once that data starts to sort of even itself out and filter through, you're going to see a bunch of teams that at the end of the day are like 500 in a conference, and you're going to be seeing Villanova and UConn near the top and everyone else with these meh records.
So I disagree on that because I think the Big East is winning games. I mean, against good teams. They won in the Gavitt games and won a lot of games. The Big East SEC Challenge went their way for the most part, or the Big 12 battle, whatever they're calling it. But the thing is, too, that same logic applies to the ACC. And the difference right now is if the ACC starts beating up on each other, which it likely will, we've already seen some weird results. BC losing to Notre Dame, Virginia Tech losing to Wake, that type of stuff. Syracuse beating Florida State was an underdog. If it's that type of the year in the ACC, then it falls back on, all right, what did you do in the non-conference? And none of these ACC teams did anything in the non-conference to help them, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird season. I think that's the kind of the vibe you're getting so far. You've already seen, what are we on, our 4th number 1 overall team in the country so far? It's just going to be one of those weird seasons. And I mean, you're seeing it right now in the NFL and NBA where COVID's really starting to rear its ugly head, and you're seeing games get postponed and shuffling, and big time players sitting out games because they have to because of COVID protocol. Like, it's only a matter of time before it starts to rip through college basketball, right? And that could even further complicate things. Now, I know part of that goes into the calculus, but eventually, like, if you see a team go on pause for a little bit, and I know Washington, I believe, has already kind of
Yeah.
had that problem
They
so far.
forfeited games. Yeah.
They had to forfeit a game, and then they had the one non-contest against Gonzaga. But if stuff like that happens, you never know. You catch a team out of rhythm one game, and all of a sudden you look like maybe a better team, even though the other team maybe wasn't in rhythm, but it still goes down as a good win. Like, let's say Syracuse catches Duke at the wrong time out of a pause or whatever. Like, it's still a win against Duke at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. I do think, though, it's just tough for me to visualize a scenario where Syracuse gets back to where they need to in this ACC, because as I laid out earlier in the week, you look at the net and how it stands right now, and currently Syracuse has just 5 quad one chances the rest of the season. Now, you could say, all right, maybe Florida State will give them one. Like, Bart Torvik projects their net ranking, and he's seeing 3 quad one wins at the end of the year and them finishing net 94. I think they'll finish better than that. But usually, if you're a bubble team, like we played this game last year where we were trying to evaluate Syracuse's resume compared to other teams. And we said, all right, Syracuse doesn't have the quad one wins, but they don't have the quad 3 or 4 losses. They already have those this year. So what you
Right.
really need to do is now market yourself as a team that started out slow, but it has those big time wins. And the unfortunate part of the scenario is they just don't have many chances to get those big time wins, to get to the 4 or 5 quad one wins. And that would even probably just put them on the fringe of the bubble. You probably need 5 or 6 if you're marketing yourself as that type of team.
Yeah, you're going to have to close kind of like how you did last year, where you won 5 of your last 7. You picked up a win against North Carolina and Clemson, and then got an ACC tournament victory. Like, that's kind of the close to the season that you need to have this year, because your chances are kind of stacked at the end when you look at Virginia Tech, Duke. I think Notre Dame's going to be a little bit better. North Carolina, like, that's where the meat of your chances are going to be. A number of those games are on the road as well, so that further works itself into the calculus there. And really, these next 7 games, I think, are going to tell the story of, you're going to go up against 2 cupcakes here to close out the non-conference slate. Those should be 2 victories, and then you've got a really soft landing into the ACC with Georgia Tech at home, a bad Virginia team at home. Then you travel to Miami and Wake Forest, and then Pitt. Like, that has to be a 6-1 stretch there. And if you go 7-0, you completely flip the narrative.
Yeah. And I guess that comes down to, I just don't see them reeling off the victories they need in that stretch. I'd almost rather the soft stretch be a little bit further on in the season for their sake. And, we would have probably put Georgetown as a soft team that's a part of this soft stretch, and they lost that game. So, as much as, yes, Virginia's bad, you could also say Virginia's looking at Syracuse and they're thinking, oh, that's an opportunity to pick up a game because Syracuse is bad. That's the nature of it right now.
Yeah, I could. So right now, KenPom is projecting this to be a 5-2 stretch. I could see the 6-1 just because of how some of the scheduling shapes out. I mean, that's 4 straight home games. That's 4 straight games where you're looking at a team who hasn't played a lot of home games. Like, we talk about how Syracuse usually has a very soft non-conference, and a lot of that is aided by the fact that they've played so many games at home. But you look at them so far, they've only played 4 home games to this point. And I get one of them was the loss to Colgate, but 4 home games in your first 10, that's not very characteristic for Syracuse. So now that you're going to literally double your home games over this next 4-game stretch, is that going to be the momentum that you need to roll through some of these early games and maybe find your groove a little bit? That could be it too.
That's a good point, because I think playing a lot of games at home can help you get on a little bit of a roll here, more practice time, less traveling, all that. The bottom line is KenPom projects them to go 16-15, 10-10 in the ACC the rest of the way. And that's including the win over Florida State to date. They need to win probably 14 ACC games So they need to exceed their ACC projection by 4 wins, I would say.
And that
And
includes
then
the ACC tournament too.
yeah, and that's all we can do right now. It's just
Yeah.
project the regular season, because you
Mhm.
look at, all right, 2016, that Final Four team, they were 19-12. 2018, 19-12. 2019, 19-12. That's been their regular season record that has put them on the bubble. If you win 14 ACC games plus these 2 non-conference games, you're looking at 20 wins. But I do think you probably need to get to 20 this year, because 14 ACC wins in this year is probably comparable to 13 or 12 wins in the ACC in those previous years I laid out.
Yeah, and that's certainly plenty. Like 14 ACC wins, and I don't even think it's a question. I even think like 13 ACC wins, and you're probably feeling pretty good. It obviously depends about who you're
I think
getting
you
them
go into
against,
the
too.
ACC tournament needing to pick off 1 or 2, and you're on the bubble at that stage.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll get into some Benny Williams thoughts because Benny has been a burning topic. He was good in his little stretch that he played against Georgetown, but then was never to be seen again. So, we'll talk about Benny Williams. How important is this next 2-game stretch for him? But make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview 2021. Local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins this Friday. Hey, you listen to podcasts for the power of the inside track. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money, because with Boost, you get the power of a free 5G phone so you can listen to the latest episodes and keep up with your favorite players and teams. The power of 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line so your family can share all the insights. And the power of one of America's largest 5G networks so you can do it all at the speed of 5G. With all that money you'll save and all that edge you'll gain, just how powerful will you become? Switch to Boost Mobile and find out. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile, free phone limited to new customers and 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage not available everywhere or for all phones and networks. See boostmobile.com for details.
Also, BetOnline has you covered all season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues to march towards the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number 1 spot for all the sports action this season. Head over to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus, some serious savings when you put down your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get that 50% welcome bonus. Basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games are on BetOnline as well. So don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, it's Benny time for us here on the show. We love to talk Benny on this show. I love talking about Benny because it's the great conundrum, because this fan base is absolutely torn on him right now. Like, this almost feels Girardian-esque from a season ago, minus the fact that people are not casting Benny off to Siena quite yet. We might get to that point though. And I love that we get like one of our great listeners, I believe it was Mahir, tweeted us a picture
Yeah,
of
how about that?
he was at the Siena gym and he was like looking for Joe Girard. I got a great kick out of that. I love if you see any Siena content, just tweet it at us.
Shout out
It's
to
an automatic
Zach
retweet.
too.
Yeah.
Zach, who tweets at us because he updated me the other day that Andrew Playtech, I think he said he's out for the season or he's got a serious injury. So there's a spot to fill there, which
The old in-season transfer.
we have not talked about this, but Andrew Playtech being at Siena, just a match made in heaven there. As someone who
fall
keeps
from
tabs
grace.
on UNC, it's just perfect.
Yeah. All right. So Lehigh and Cornell, those are the next 2 matchups for Benny Williams. And I know there's that Cornell game that's sort of in flux right now, and people are wondering, oh, is Syracuse going to be able to schedule a game? I think that, okay, let's say that the Cornell game gets axed. I think you will be able to find a game with somebody,
I hope
because
so.
you're going to start to see the COVID stuff rip through a lot of these programs, I'd imagine, these next couple of days and weeks. And you're going to see teams looking for games. Like Duke is looking for a game right now. And I'm not saying they're going to go out and play Duke next week, because that's, I think, the furthest thing from what could possibly happen. But I think you will find suitors, because you will see teams looking for midweek games. A lot of teams might even have that week off and say, you know what, we can go to Syracuse on a Monday or Tuesday and then send our guys off for winter break. You've got some flexibility to play with here, and I think you'll be just fine in finding a new opponent if you need to get to that point.
Yeah, in regards to Benny here, I gotta say, there's no excuse for not playing him 25, even 30 minutes in these two games. If you have a good start to the game, if you get up and you want to bring him in at that normal time slot of the 10 to 8 minute mark of the first half, let's take Lehigh because that's more of a game that you really just should win by 20, 30 points. Cornell could be a little back and forth at times, but Lehigh this Saturday, if you're leading by 12, 15 at the 10-minute mark of the first half, I mean, play him the rest of the game if you want to. It's
Yeah.
just so important that he grows, that he gains some confidence in the stretch, because if he doesn't gain it now, then it's ACC play. It only gets tougher. And then it gets into you really need to win those games. And if you're down, you can't really rely on him. And Jim Boeheim's going to shorten the rotation. And I just really want to see him play 25, 30 minutes in each of these next two games if things are going according to script in terms of how the game flow is going.
I'm with you there. I 100% agree with everything you said. I would love to see Benny out there for 25, 30 minutes. I don't think it'll ever get to 30 minutes, but 25, I think, is a better sort of a realistic goal. But here's the sort of conundrum that I feel like Jim Boeheim might be plagued with is the fact that you look what happened against Colgate and against Georgetown. Those were games that it felt like you had in hand. Like you had a 15-point lead against Colgate in the first half. You were
Yeah.
up 10 at the half against Georgetown. And you get to a point where it's like, all right, let's just keep our foot on the gas here. And the group that went out and did that to build you that lead, keep them out there and don't let up. And all of a sudden, like you kind of almost play those mind games with yourself where it's like, all right, I've seen this lead get blown, and he knows you lose to Lehigh or you lose to Cornell or whatever team that you end up scheduling if you have to replace the Cornell opponent. If you lose one of those games, it's over. Like you're not going to the tournament this year if you lose one of those games.
Yeah, that's a good point because the defense is so shaky, especially in terms of 3-point defense, that we've seen these leads disappear really quickly. I think of Indiana at the half, they're
Yeah.
in full control up like 17, and then you blink an eye, and by the under 12 timeout, it was basically tied, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think the one thing, though, the one counterpoint I would say is I don't think against Lehigh, Cornell, or whoever the hell else you might play, there's not going to be a Mike Woodson in that huddle. There's not going to be, I know I touted Patrick Ewing as a bad X's and O's guy, but he's still a good like he's a Hall of Famer, for Christ's sake. Like he knows basketball. You're not going to have a basketball brain on the other side at those guys' level against Lehigh, Cornell, or whoever else you might play.
Yeah, I guess Colgate, they've got a good young coach, but they
They do.
still
Yep.
came back. So Benny's averaging 13 minutes a game right now in the 10 games he's appeared in so
That
far.
even feels high. Like
That
let's be
does
honest,
feel
that does
high
feel
because,
high. Like what
yeah,
game
I'd have to go
played
game by game.
22 minutes in? Like he has to have one of those under his belt then, right?
Yeah, so actually Indiana, he played 19 minutes, Auburn 21 minutes, but these are the last three games. Florida State played 2 minutes, Villanova 3 minutes, Georgetown 4 minutes when he scored that spinning layup there, and that came from like 5 minutes or 6 minutes in the first half to about 2 minutes, I'd say, in the first half, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him come in earlier than that and just use him in the second half, especially if the game does get out of hand. And let's take the second half then, for example. You're up by 25 after the starters give you a little bit extra push from a halftime advantage. And, there's 8 minutes left. Just ride him for the final 8 minutes. I think Jim Boeheim's more willing to do that probably than play him a little bit extra. Well, in the first half, I don't think he's going to play 25 minutes, but I'm just saying if I was the head coach, that's what I would do, because the way I heard Red Autry even on Devo's podcast this week say, we need him. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's pretty clear that he brings some stuff that if it clicks, he could be a huge X factor for this team. And this
Changes
is
the
kind of the
season.
time to figure it out.
Like if you've got a 5-star that can play up to his potential, and I get he's a late bloomer. He late bloomed into that 5-star rating. Like he was a top 50 guy, but those guys don't usually become 5 stars. And then all of a sudden he just shoots up, does well at his prep school. Like those are the things that you see with late bloomers. And I think Darius Baisley is another example of that. And not to bring up a sore subject there, but like he was sort of that late bloomer type. And he was a little slow to start with in the NBA, but now he's become a pretty solid player in the league. And now you look at a guy like Benny, like, yeah, it's a little slow to start, but if he can pick it up and develop, like, that completely can change your season right there. If you get a 5-star playing up to his potential and starting to feel comfortable at the Division I level, all of a sudden, like, it feels like you made a midseason trade in the NBA or baseball or football. Like, it feels like you gained a new player and a new superstar almost if he can play that way.
Exactly. And the bench minutes they're getting, the bench production they're getting right now is not going to cut it for the meat of ACC play. When you're playing a lot of games, you're traveling, all that stuff. So they need him to step up. And this is the time to really see what you've got in him, because I don't see him, quote unquote, turning a corner in the middle of ACC play. Maybe, but I don't think it's as likely as him turning a corner in these two games. So really take advantage of these two games.
All right, real quick, and then we'll get out of here. A successful 3-game stretch for the Lehigh Cornell game. A successful stretch looks like what to you?
For Benny or just for the
Benny,
team?
for Benny. Like, the only successful 2-game stretch you can have here is 2-0. Like, you have to go 2-0.
Well, yeah, sure. Okay.
But for Benny individually.
Individually, I would like to see him get to double figures in one game and establish that he's growing on offense, just gain some confidence, and then just a couple moments where he's provided already on defense, a couple block shots, just something to get the crowd involved, get him sort of a little bit more confident. And if we can walk out of these past 2 games and say, you know what, he just had a career high in one of them, and he's got a lot more confidence than he did on December 11th or 12th, then I think we're in a much better spot as a team.
I was gonna say the exact same thing in terms of double figures. I want to see a double figure game. Listen, I'm not asking to see the arc on the jump shot improve. Like, that stuff is a tough fix, right? Especially in season. But for me, I want to see one game where you get 10 points and another game where you get like 6 rebounds. Okay, it can even come in the same game too.
Right.
If he goes out there and has a 10 and 6, we'll be on this podcast thrilled on Monday or Wednesday or whatever day it ends up being. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you need to see some form of, all right, he turned a corner. He's got the confidence now. He can hang with the big boys. So we will preview all things Lehigh tomorrow. Also, we're going to have Drew Carter on the show next week,
That's
our pal
right,
from
yeah.
ESPN, because he is going to be on the call for that Cornell game. He was with us, if you remember, for the Liberty preview, brought some good luck for that one. So we will have him back on the show. He texted us and said, hey guys, if I know it's the doldrums of the non-con, if you want me on, come on. And we're like, hey man, open chair anytime. You're always welcome on the show. So he will join us that'll be Tuesday morning. He will join us on the show. So we will do some fun stuff with him then. All right. So full Lehigh preview tomorrow, and then we'll recap everything for you next week and have Drew Carter on Tuesday. So for Tim, I'm Tyler. We'll be back with everything Lehigh tomorrow.